Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to talk about the topic of tarot and inner alchemy. And today I would like to talk about the 12 stages of alchemy in relation to the tarot major arcana cards. And this is a little bit like a part 3 of a kind of mini-series that I have done. I have already done a part 1 and part 2, and the previous video, part 2, was about the 7 stages of alchemy, and that was in regard to the 7 major arcana cards that are corresponded to the 7 planets, and this is all to do with the correspondences of the Golden Dawn, because they are the correspondences that I always use. So I'm going to be showing some major arcana cards from the Thoth deck, Crowley Thoth deck, and the Universal Tarot by Roberto De Angelis. And I'm going to show the 12 major arcana cards and their related astrology signs and how these correspond to the 12 stages of alchemy. And I'm going to need to read my notes here, so you'll just need to bear with me a little bit in regard to that. So the first of the 12 stages is the sign of Aries, and that is the Emperor card. And in the 12 stages of alchemy, this is the stage called purification. And this relates to the purification of the inner self. And the sign of Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and it is to do with the self, because the first sign is to do with the self and the identity. So this corresponds with the first stage of alchemy, which is purification. And the Emperor card is also to do with the self-domain, the domain of the self. And the red and orange colours of the card, to me, represent a kind of fiery purification as well. And this also refers to the first principles, because it's the first stage of alchemy, and this is the first sign. So the first stage of the 12 stages is purification, and the sign of Aries. The second sign is Taurus. This is the Hierophant card. And this is to do with the stage called congelation, to congel. And congelation is to do with binding and bringing things together. So it's kind of a unification, and it's to do with the bringing together, in this case with the Hierophant card, of heaven and earth, because Taurus is an earth sign, and the Hierophant represents the mediation between earth and heaven. So congelation, and it means to unify or to bind. And the word religion comes from the Latin word religio, which means to bind. So the second stage of alchemy It's called conjugation, and it is corresponding to the sign of Taurus, which is the second sign. The third stage and the third sign is Gemini. This is the Lover's card from the Thoth Tarot. And this is to do with the stage called fixation. And Gemini is the sign that rules thinking and the mind. So this is to do with the focus of the mind. And I like to think of this figure here as a kind of an overmind type of concept. So this is like bringing together the two sides of the inner self. So Gemini, the sign of, this is the sign of the twins, which is the two parts, two sides of the inner self. I mean, you could even think of this as the two sides of the brain. And this is to do with mind focus, so fixation, you know, when people can be fixated on things. This is to do with the focus of the mind and the awareness of the inner mind. So that's the sign of Gemini for the third stage. The fourth stage, which is Cancer, the sign of Cancer, Cancer the crab. Fourth stage is dissolution, to dissolve. This is a water sign. And if you look at this card too, there is quite a bit, the use of blue for water. And I think a lot of people don't realise that this circular type of thing here, it's actually meant to represent a holy grail, but it's turned outwards to show the rim of the grail cup. So this is to do with dissolution, which is to do with dissolving. And this is the inner journey. And the Chariot, of course, is to do with movement. So this is representing the inner journey and the Holy Grail. And it is the inner journey towards, moving towards inner energies. So it's turning inward. And this is to do with maybe dissolving a little bit of the fixation stage that comes before this. This is to do with dissolving things a bit more as you're going along with the inner journey. So this is the Chariot card, which is corresponding to the sign of Cancer and dissolution. Number 5 stage is the sign of Leo. Here is the Strength card. And this is to do with the stage, it's called digestion, but it is also called conversion. Maybe conversion is a better word to use here. And this is to do with the conversion of energy and the channeling and circulation of energy. Leo is a fire sign, so that's a very energetic sign. And this card, you know, Leo is also to do with passion as well, passion and drive. So this is to do with the channeling of energy and the circulation of energy. And I like to sort of point out the infinity symbol. You know, that is like an energy circuit here with the infinity symbol. So this is to do with the circulation of energy. And this is like, you know, I would rather use this word conversion for this stage. The conversion of energy, channeling and circulation of energy. And there is also the thought that the maiden here with the primal energy of the lion, that there is also some kind of a circulation of energy here with the hands. It's kind of forming another infinity symbol. So this is the 5th stage of alchemy, and it's called conversion. And this is the sign of Leo. The next sign is the sign of Virgo. This is the sixth sign, and this is the Hermit card. And the 6th stage is called distillation, which means to distill. Right, it's like a purification. So, for example, distilled water is purified water. And this is to do with the awareness of subtle energy, and the awareness is to do with the mind again, and Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury. So this is another application of the mind. Instead of the focus of the card of Gemini, which is also ruled by Mercury. This is to do with the awareness of subtle energy of the mind, and to hold higher awareness. And the sign of Virgo is a very discerning sign. So this is to be aware of subtle energy of the mind and to hold higher awareness. And in some ways you could think of this lamp here, because he's holding this lamp. So that could represent the holding of higher awareness. So this is the 6th stage of alchemy. It's called distillation. The 7th sign and the 7th stage is Libra, the sign of Libra. And this stage is called sublimation, and that comes from the word subtle. And this is to do with the what they call underlying energies. So this is to do with, you know, the subtle energies of the universal laws. So this is the universal laws and the subtle principles of the universal laws and the underlying energies and the balancing of those. Because the universal laws are very subtle. Most everyday people wouldn't even recognise that they are there. So this is the 7th sign of Libra, and it is the stage called sublimation. And this is to do with the subtle and underlying energies of universal laws. And this card in the Thoth deck is called Adjustment. What a beautiful card. Now for the 8th stage is called Separation, and that is the sign of Scorpio. Here is the Death card. The ultimate separation card. And this is to do with awareness separating from the body. Which pretty much sums up the stage of the death process. Separation is the name of this stage for Scorpio, and it is awareness separating from the body and transition of the actual elements. So this is, particularly from a spiritual point of view, this is the body transitioning to soul and then spirit. So this is the sign of Scorpio, the 8th stage, and this is separation. Now for the 9th stage. The 9th stage is the sign of Sagittarius. This is called incineration. It's a very fiery card. This card is called Art. And by that, Crowley meant the art of alchemy. It's a very alchemical card. And Sagittarius is a fire sign. So you can see the flames here under this cauldron. You have the lion here representing, the fire element. It's actually the mixture of fire and water. This is an eagle type of figure here and symbol, and it is actually representing the sign of Scorpio to represent the fire. There is a connection with the eagle, with the sign of Scorpio, as well as the scorpion itself. But this is to do with the mingling, the mixing of fire and water. And this stage is called incineration for the sign of Sagittarius. Transmutation of divine energy. And the transmutation also normally refers to metals. And that is why this card is also called temperance in other decks, but temperance does not mean moderation in this way, in this sense. It never really did. It means the tempering of metal or a very, very hot heat process to convert and change and transmute something from one form to another. So this is the transmutation of divine energy, incineration. Incineration is the name of the stage. Transmutation of divine energy, and which this leads to divine awareness. That's the 9th stage of incineration. Sagittarius. Now the 10th stage is Capricorn. Here is the Devil card. And this is called fermentation. And that's an interesting name for this stage and this card. Capricorn and the Devil card. And this is fermentation. This is to do with creating sulfur for change. And sulfur is a very activating product. So this is fermentation, creating sulfur for change in order to develop virtue. And this card This stage of fermentation is also known as illumination. That is very interesting because the devil is holding the wooden stake here with this fiery pole, which is fire, and even the connection with Lucifer, that's to do with fire. So this is the stage of fermentation. It's also called illumination, and this is creating sulfur for change in order to develop virtue. And fermentation is to do with change too. Now the 11th stage, the sign of Aquarius. This is the star card. And this is this sign of multiplication, the stage of multiplication. And this is to do with the multiplication of virtues. So the previous card was to do with developing virtue. This is to do with the multiplication of virtue. And the sign of Aquarius is to do with many people. That's multiplication. It's to do with groups, the collective, the larger the collection of people. And this is to do with the multiplication of virtues multiplied into infinity. And with that, I think of the stars, because this card is called the star, and this is multiplied into infinity, into the cosmos. So this is multiplied into infinity, and it's also to do with, this multiplication is also to do with group consciousness. The star represents consciousness, a high state of consciousness. So this is the 11th stage of alchemy, called multiplication. This relates to the sign of Aquarius. The final stage, which is the sign of Pisces, and this is called projection, and it's also called perfection. So there are two ways of seeing this last stage. It is the transmutation. So this is the final stage of the great work, and this is to do with transmutation, the completion of the great work. But it is transmutation according to the degree of perfection. So if the work has not been done properly in the previous stages, particularly the stage of fermentation with Capricorn, if the virtues are not developed sufficiently, then this last stage, which is called projection, and it's also known as perfection, that will not be complete, particularly if the stage of fermentation in Capricorn has not been perfected completely. So what I like to think about with this card, with this sign of Pisces, which this is to do with the last stage, which is projection or perfection. I like to also reflect and think about the Thoth card, because this is the moon card and the Pisces card for the Thoth deck. And you know, if you're looking at the scarab beetle here, who is actually moving and the sun and working in accordance with the sun, and really it's really to do with the cycles of time as well. It's moving towards the cycles of time. This is very much focusing on the evolution of the individual, the evolution of humanity, in order to complete this great work and this later stages of perfection. I think this card in particular shows this one I think is to do more with the perfection process. I think this card represents that more for me. I think this Waite Smith based image is more to do with the more of a projection type of concept, which is not always positive, because I think this projection stage, this last stage, can be more to do with the work not being complete. You have this evolution here of the crayfish emerging from the water and travelling along the path and the journey. I think this is more to do with possibly the incompleteness of the great work. I think this card of the Crowley deck actually shows this in a more I think this card has got less to do with projection. I think this is more to do with perfection. And I think this card is more of a reminder of the stages of alchemy, the final stage of alchemy, and the great work, and how this is all to do with a process of perfection, whether it's for the individual or whether it's for the whole of humanity, through time, through the evolution of the individual or humanity itself. So it is a perfection process. So they are the 12 stages of alchemy in regard to the 12 zodiac signs or astrology signs, and how these relate to the tarot. So I'm going to put this video with my other two videos about tarot and inner alchemy, and I hope this was helpful for people who are interested in the relationship between tarot and the stages of alchemy. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.